Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another Learn English vocabulary lesson. My name's Johnny, this is Near Native English, and today we're going to be taking a look at the new flying motorbike.
Russian engineers have crafted a hover bike, which they've dubbed the Scorpion 3. It's made to ride with all the ease of your standard dirt bike, but in case you hadn't noticed, the bike's chassis seems to be mounted to a drone. Here's a biker-cum-pilot taking the Scorpion for a spin in a warehouse in Moscow. It's capable of reaching speeds of 30 miles per hour and an altitude of 33 feet.
Okay, so the first word we're going to take a look at today is dub. Now, this specific meaning of dub is referring to when you give something or someone a name that describes them in some way. It's usually to give someone a playful nickname or an unofficial title based on some notable characteristic the person or the thing has. So for example, everyone knows Michael Jordan, but we also know him as His Airness or Air Jordan. These are both the nicknames he was given, so we can say Michael Jordan was dubbed His Airness or dubbed Air Jordan. So the words nicknamed, titled, or labeled all have very similar meanings to the word dub. So you should also be familiar with the former President Obama, who in March of 2010 implemented the Affordable Care Act, which you would probably be more familiar with its other name as it was dubbed Obamacare. So a project or operation may get dubbed a special name. The media or some critics may even dub something the greatest or the worst of something in history, etc., etc., depending on how well something is received. So let's take a look at another example. The body, thousands of years old, was found in the Alps and dubbed the Iceman. And now we have chassis. I'm not going to talk too much about this word as it's fairly straightforward. So chassis just refers to the frame of a vehicle, which is usually a steel frame supported on springs that holds the body and motor of the vehicle. And don't be confused by the spelling. When we say the word, it's pronounced chassis. So some words that often go with chassis are to build a chassis, you can design a chassis. The chassis can be made from steel or aluminium. Just as in the example, the new chassis was constructed to a large extent from high-strength steel. So, moving on to altitude. The noun altitude refers to how high something rises from a certain point. Whether it refers to how high a plane is flying or to the height of a landform, the word altitude is used to describe an object's elevation. And altitude is usually measured from sea level. Think of the words height or elevation as they have similar meanings. So let's take a look at Mount Everest. Now Mount Everest's highest point sits at about 8,850 meters above sea level, which is way above what is considered high altitude. Now high altitude is sometimes defined to begin at 2,400 meters above sea level, and when you get to 8,000 meters, this is considered the death zone, as there is not enough oxygen for humans to breathe. And most commercial flights go to a height of somewhere around 10,000 meters, which is considered a good cruising altitude, as it can improve jet engine performance because the thinner air gives less resistance to the aircraft and they can save a little bit on fuel. And so some common words for altitude are high or low altitude. You can lose or gain altitude, or if you go too high, you may suffer from altitude sickness.
The The machine can stay airborne for half an hour on one charge. It might look like the stuff of James Bond, but it could be yours for somewhere in the region of £120,000. And there are even plans for it to be used for everyday purposes. If perhaps you fancy a new way to commute.
And now we're going to take a look at airborne. So airborne is an adjective that describes something that is flying through the air, carried either by an aircraft or the wind. Think of the words floating or in flight. So any bird that is in the air we can describe as being airborne, such as this eagle here, or even anyone who parachutes out of an airplane, for example, as they float slowly down to the ground. Sometimes we also talk about things you can't see, as in this sentence. Great clouds of smog hover above our city and airborne diseases multiply. So diseases can also be airborne. So some common words found with airborne are an airborne soldier or paratrooper. We also have airborne units, and sometimes things can be airborne and therefore spread. So you're probably familiar with the adjective fancy, but now we're going to take a look at the verb form. So the verb fancy is to have a particular liking or desire for something. Think of the words like, want, wish for, or even attracted to. Just as in this picture here, this young man obviously fancies the girl. Another example would be she fancied a necklace that she had seen in the jeweler's window. So in this example, to fancy is more to wish for something, whereas the young man that fancies the girl refers to him being attracted to her. Alternatively, if someone loves themselves too much, we might even say they fancy themselves. And lastly, some common word pairs. When you're hungry, you may fancy some dessert, or you might fancy a boy or a girl, or like we mentioned before, maybe you fancy yourself. And lastly, we have commute. Now, commute can be a verb or a noun, and it refers to a regular journey of some distance to and from your place of work. The phrases go back and forth or travel to and from are also very similar in meaning. So in this illustration here, they are commuting by a car, but commute can be any type of transport. As in this quote, we want to encourage cycling for commutes for obvious reasons. According to some research, more than 50% of New Yorkers take public transport to and from work, whereas in Australia, 2 out of 3 people drive their car to work. So you can commute to work or commute back home. We can describe a commute as being long or short, and most people commute during rush hour, which of course makes commuting even more hassle. Anyways, that'll do for today's lesson. So if you learn a new word, you might want to start practicing it down in the comments section. But as always, thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will catch you guys next time.